It's the OnePlus 5 right here in my hands. Guys, in this video, I'm going to tell you if you want this or not. And my opinion will be your opinion. Alright, so let's take a look at this. This is a slight update. And I say slight because not a lot has changed since the OnePlus 3T. OnePlus 4 was missed. If you guys don't know anything, 4 is kind of like the number 13 in Western culture over in China. It's a bad no-no word. Superstitions, which are beliefs based upon the ignorance of the laws of nature, but they still keep those things because some people are afraid of 4. So, OnePlus 5. Plus 5 is, like, that's very powerful, so we skipped 4 because 5. Let's go through the specs first, and then I'll tell you what I think about this, and we'll talk about the camera just a little bit, because that's the thing they're really harping on, this dual camera system. First off, the specs, shall we? So you got a 5.5-inch screen. It looks just like the OnePlus 3T on the outside. Haven't updated the aesthetics at all. If you're someone who wants like the sleek, sexy curved screen phone, this is not it, but it looks a lot like the old phone. 1080p, 401 is the pixels per inch. It's 16 by 9, of course, and then you've got the Gorilla Glass on there. We have a 2.45 gigahertz Qualcomm Snapdragon 835. It does not run at that at all times, or else it would pretty much melt the phone. It runs quite a bit lower than that usually in regular use. And then we have a couple different versions here. You can get one version that has 64 gigabytes of memory and 6 gigs of RAM, or you can get 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigabytes of memory like I have right here. 8 gigabytes of RAM in a phone sounds ridiculous, but once you have 400 things open at the same time, all these apps running in the background, and you're playing a game or whatever, and you realize, oh my god, this phone is not stuttering whatsoever, then you're going to be like, I get why it feels so snappy. So the real speed increase here is probably because of the RAM. If you already had the last phone with the 6 gigabytes of RAM, I'm not noticing much of a difference there between the two. No micro SD. We have dual SIM on this phone, but still no micro SD. They call this thing the flagship killer, and without a micro SD, it is not the flagship killer. It is a very viable alternative with 128 gigabytes of memory, but for someone like me who wants to put like a gazillion terabytes of music onto this thing, not gonna happen. You can't keep all your movies on here when you're traveling either and stuff like that. All right, as far as the camera goes, right here on the back, we've got a 16 megapixel camera. That's your sort of wide camera. It's a Sony sensor, f1.7 is the aperture. And then we have the dual LED flash. The telephoto, there's another lens or another little camera right beside this one. That's a telephoto, and that one's a 20 megapixel Sony camera. We'll talk about that in just a second. On the front here, facing you, you've got a 16 megapixel Sony. It's a different sensor than, on the front and the back. Not quite as good at low light. Battery is 3,300 milliamp hours, and it's non-removable. You can't take the back off. This thing's completely sealed. They do that for a couple of different reasons. It's much easier to send to other countries, imports and exports, and keeps the price down a little bit. We have USB-C on the bottom, and it's not 3, it's USB 2C, but it does do pretty fast transfer. Just I wish it was 3, especially at this price point. And we also have a headphone jack on the bottom there. Wi-Fi is ABGN AC. It does 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, 2x2 MIMO if you like. Bluetooth 5. It's got NFC right here. NFC things right up here in the top somewhere. Makes it really easy to transfer data and stuff. Fingerprint sensor on the front, which is nice. You got accelerometer, you got your gyroscope, proximity, ambient light, all these different sensors inside there. It comes with Oxygen OS. Right now it's Android 7.1.1, and they have done a pretty good job of keeping this updated. Now, the Oxygen OS is really, really bare bones, and I kind of like it that way. There's not a lot of bloatware, not a lot of junk. Very similar to Google's stock Android. They have added a few things like the gestures and stuff, or, like if your phone's off right now, like you can turn this on and off, double-click the power button, and I just snapped a picture, like of nothing, whatever. So if you see, like, a monkey stealing a cat and jumping out of a window, you can like, oh shit, then hit power twice and you take a picture without having to go into your phone and all that stuff. So just make sure you're not covering up the lenses. One thing I've had a little problem with is the position of the lenses right up here on the top. I tend to like fat finger this thing. My fingers always get in front of the lenses, so be dainty with it, okay guys? There you go. The dimensions are 154.2 by 74.1 by 7.25 millimeters. It's 153 grams. And then they've got these snazzy cases you can get. I love the wooden ones here. All right, so let's talk about this phone. Okay, it's really fast. A lot of people have accused them of cheating on their benchmarks. So we ran a couple of the benchmarks where they were cheating. What they're doing is they're letting the phone run at the maximum spec, so you can really see the potential performance of this device. Then Antutu and all that stuff, it's going to show up as being really fast. Also, Geekbench, it's going to show up as being really fast. As you can see here, it does beat the OnePlus 3T. Didn't test it against any other phones out there. Some people have accused this device of cheating on benchmarks, and even the company itself has said, well, when we're running certain benchmarks, we let the phone run at pretty much maximum spec, and that's not going to be indicative of just everyday use because that would drain the battery and all that sort of thing. Maybe they said it could sustain that all day long, but I wouldn't chance it as far as overheating goes. But I guess they're trying to say, like, hey, it can run like this. And as you can see here, it beats the OnePlus 3T and all the benchmarks, and Antutu, and also Geekbench. And those are two of the programs that this phone doesn't overclock. It just runs pretty much at maximum spec. It may run at maximum spec when you're playing 3D games and stuff. So I'm not seeing too much of the reason to whine and complain. It's a phone, and it's one of the snappiest, fastest phones on the planet. Just to make sure, we also ran 3D Mark. Now let's get down and talk about the camera. So the camera on this dual camera thing, what are they doing with that? Well, there are a lot of the Chinese phones out there doing this. Apple was doing this with their phone. It's sort of a portrait mode, and they actually call it like a bokeh, or I guess they call it portrait mode, but it gives you the bokeh, and the file names are titled bokeh. Bokeh is like the background blur that really makes your subject stand out, and when you put it in portrait mode, it takes it a second to process, and it doesn't seem to be as forgiving of hand movement and stuff. So I did get a couple blurry shots, and especially in like lower lighting situations, you have to be really still and wait for this thing to catch the picture and process. But it uses both lenses to sort of combine everything together, give you a nice blown out blurry background with the subject in focus, and it gives it that sort of look that, like, hey, this is a professional shot, like a photographer took this picture on a nice camera. Something you never could do with lenses like this ever before. And they do a pretty good job of it. It's still not the best phone I've ever seen for low light performance and that sort of thing. So there's that. As far as the zoom mode goes, speaking of low light, so the zoom mode, you've got the other lens, and it's a farther zoom. So when you're using that, it works perfectly in bright light situations. The aperture on that one is 2.6, so it doesn't let nearly as much light in compared to the other lens that's 1.7, plus it's a longer lens. So the longer lens, the motion blur really translates into your shots with the longer lenses. So what happens is when you're in like a low light situation, it doesn't use the longer lens. It just digitally crops in and gives you kind of a grainy picture. It's not the best situation, and the phone doesn't tell you when this is happening. We need more control to be able to like say, hey, I don't want this at all. Like when I'm doing that, or at least something that says on the screen like, warning, we're using digital zoom because it's too dark in here. Those two things, and the fact that it's not the best I've ever seen in low light, make it not the perfect camera solution, but the portrait mode is really cool and fun to play with. Just make sure you hold it really steady. And it does look better than the last lens just for standard photography, but I'm not sure if it'll dethrone, some of the other more expensive cameras out there when it comes to just individual photo photography. You're gonna have to rely on the gimmicks and the portrait mode, and that's something that's gonna sell this phone because the pictures do look cool. And I'm going to be using this phone because I like the way it looks with the portrait mode, but there are caveats, guys. If this had an SD card slot, it would be my favorite phone, but instead it's just going to be my favorite phone. There you have it, the OnePlus 5. We're going to play around with this a little bit more because we've been shooting mostly JPEGs for this video because that's what a lot of you guys will do, but it does have raw image capture capabilities. Oh, and also, by the way, here's some video footage we took of this phone. Show you the 4K video it does. I'll come back and play around with this a little bit more, just with the photo mode, and we'll see really what we can do, take it out in the woods and stuff, who knows. So stay tuned for that video soon. That's been a not so quick overview, but hopefully Oh yeah, I was supposed to tell you guys if you're going to buy one or not. The answer is maybe you will buy this. These things are getting up into the price range where it's now sort of a, I don't know, is it worth this or should I spend $100 more to get something else? Well, it does feel snappier than the Samsung Galaxy S8, but doesn't have an SD card and other things, you know, so it's more of a weighted decision now. Still an awesome phone. Yes, get a t-shirt, would you? Ooh, this one, again. All right, bye.